her a pen. Oh, hi. We're live.
And we are live and in person. Oh my goodness, we are not even set up yet completely. It has been one of those mornings, everyone. I don't know if all of you are experiencing anything similar this morning, but I am so glad that we are live and we are here. So we're going to go ahead and get ourselves completely set up.
Do you have an extra pen?
And hope, I know, if we can even hear each other with that. But I'm Deborah Seminaro Eldridge. Welcome to DCE Law, and I'm going to be doing one of these things because it's easier for me like this than it is trying to do it, with all of it on my head. I'm Deborah Seminaro Eldridge. I'm the attorney and owner of DCE Law, and I'm coming to you live in Florida with legal advice and today real estate advice in the Florida market and shopping in the Florida market.
I'm just going to give
those up because those are not going to add anything to this live. So every Thursday morning we do this 8:30 coffee break. I was going to say breakfast bite because that's what I call them for my students, but we are doing a coffee break. And I have with me today a dear friend, and as far as I'm concerned, the best real estate agent in the Tampa Bay area.
Now you got
Rachel,
some friends, though.
I know. I was just gonna say I have to say that, not to say any of my other friends are not great real estate agents, because you all are. But if you are looking to sell your home or you're looking to buy a home, she is the bomb. She's it. So I'm going to let Rachel, and I have known each other for about 20 years. I was thinking about that.
Well, Audrey's 19, so I'd say 19 years.
19 years. You're right, because that's actually how we met. And Rachel has been a real estate agent now for...
I got my license in 2002. I started practicing in 2003.
That's what I thought. Okay, because I thought it was right around the time that Audrey, actually, came into the picture. So she has seen the real estate market from every avenue. We had the situation where the prices went crazy at one point in time, and then they came down and leveled out, and now we're back in that crazy, very expensive seller's market. And so I would love, Rachel, to tell us a little bit first about yourself and your background, so and who you're presently working with.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's always fun getting to chat with you, especially over coffee. So that was one of our technical difficulties. The coffee wasn't ready yet, and I could not do this without it. But yeah, funny enough, I graduated from University of Florida, master's degree in agronomy, which is the study of plants within agriculture. And while I was finishing up my master's degree, drove up and down through Gainesville looking to buy a home, and I had called 7 realtors and not one call back. And my family has always been in real estate. I was like, well, if all I did was answer my phone or return calls, I should be okay in this field. So I got my real estate license, didn't put it in active until 2003, and then just kind of hit the ground running. 3, 4, 5, 6 were great years in real estate. 7 was kind of, and then 8, everybody kind of woke up and realized that the market had crashed. So, in 2009, I was recruited to open an office downtown St. Pete. And in 2009, nobody knew what was happening in the real estate industry. Everybody was bleeding, I guess I should say, bleeding. They were losing fortunes. There were foreclosures and short sales. I remember the office that I had been in, I think I closed our first short sale for that office, and we really just had to figure it out because nobody knew what one was or how to do it. The banks didn't even know how to do it. So got through that, and in 2009 opened that office downtown for another brokerage. And then we moved into, I remember, 10,000 square feet in 2010, and every real estate brokerage in town was looking at us like we were insane because, realtors were going to work from home, and we didn't need big offices, and brick and mortar was a thing of the past. I remember my favorite bookstore, Borders, all of those closed down, and then it's like brick and mortar, everybody's working from home, we don't need it anymore, but we took over a huge space, and quickly grew to be the number 1 in the market with sales volume and units closed. It took us 18 months to get there. So,
wow.
Yes, it was during one of the most difficult real estate markets. So fast forward, we ran that for about 12 years, and then last year stepped out of that leadership management role and partnered with two ladies that I've known for 20 years that highly respected in the community. So Mary and Jan McGuire and Rhonda Sanderford with Yes Homes, which is a team within a brokerage. And so I've been working with them. June will be a full year. And it's just, going from that teaching, consulting, coaching, leadership mode into back on the streets into sales has been an interesting adjustment, to say the least.
I bet.
But it's also exciting. Like it's so exciting every day, and it's like just keeping your finger on the pulse of the market with COVID. When I remember March 2020, when at 5 p.m. it was St. Patrick's Day in St. Pete. And that's when everything shut down. And I remember sitting in the office with the owner of the company and with our productivity coach, like, what are we going to do? And nobody knew what was going to happen. And it was just like we were in limbo for about 30 days. And all of a sudden, this huge surge of buyers were dying to buy a home.
Because people were moving down because they had the pandemic and they could locate to wherever they wanted to, right?
Not only that, they wanted to get out of condo buildings, they wanted to get out of apartments, they wanted their own yard space. And if you guys don't realize this, I don't know where you're watching this video from, but Pinellas County is a peninsula. We are surrounded by water, and so we have very limited land, and we're 99% built out. So building a home, building new construction doesn't really work in our area. It's more of tear down, build new type of world. So since March 2020, we've just watched the real estate market do insane things. I mean, 24 to 26% year over year price increases. And I have a buyer right now from Austin, Texas, and I mean that market is actually even hotter than this market.
I believe it.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting ride, especially over the last 2 years, just waiting for things to level out, and finally we're at that point where I think things are leveling out.
And I wanted to ask you about that, actually. Bringing us to today, where's the market going in general? What's going on at this point?
So we just took a listing the other evening, and the seller said to us, she's like, we got to get on the market now. We want to get on the market now. Their house wasn't ready to go on the market, but we got to get on the market now. She said, and I'm going to use these words, we feel like our window is shutting. Yes. And all that means for everybody out there, it does not mean that prices are going to drop. What it means is that 24, 26, 28% year over year increase that we've seen is going to flatten out to, I'm expecting an 14 to 18% increase, which thank God, honestly.
Right.
Thank God. Because, I mean, that was just uncontrollable price increasing.
Yes.
And it's not the same for every market. I think that St. Pete, Pinellas County, I mean, when you hear the word Tampa, what they're really talking about is St. Pete.
Right.
If you watch the show Selling Tampa, the properties that they show you and the restaurants they go to are in St. Pete. So we're just kind of grouped together, but price values locally have been below your state average and your national average. So those definitely caught up. Right. And, during all this time, rent prices also just...
That's right. And that's part of the problem. And that's what happens too, right? In a seller's market is you have these rent increases as a result of it.
Yeah.
Which is...
You had rent increases, you had astronomical price increases on housing. Then couple that with supply chain issues.
Oh my goodness.
So you can't even get the materials to build the homes, and then the materials that you got were inflated in pricing,
exactly.
Which inflates the builder's cost. Land costs went up. So it's like a big mixer of it's not great for buyers. How about
Right. Is what it was boiling down to, definitely. But now we're evening out. So, let me ask you this. Does a buyer need a realtor when they're looking to purchase a home?
Well, like what I always say is a buyer does not need a realtor to find a home.
Okay.
Like if you wanted to go find a home, you can find a home. Maybe.
Maybe.
Well, we go back to the inventory.
There's a little art to it right now, especially, right?
Well, let me run back to that just for a second, Deb. So, there's this great chart I found. I follow this guy, Leonard Kiefer, on LinkedIn, and he is the deputy chief.
Writing that down.
Yeah, he's the deputy chief economist for Freddie Mac. Or maybe Fannie Mae, I can't remember which one. But every day he does a daily chart, and I've been looking for the data on this for a while. But he did a chart of new construction starts in the country, and he started in I think he started in 2000 and ran it through 2022. So you could watch that in 2000, the new construction starts increasing. 2008 with the mortgage crisis, they just plummeted. And then they never came back to the levels. They still haven't come back to the levels that they were in 2002, 3, 4. They just haven't even come back. And then if you were to take that chart and then you took population growth of the country and you put that on top of that, you would see what happened was we had 82 million Americans called millennials come of home buying age, that they now range between 25 and 39 years old.
How many million?
82
million. Oh my word.
And I think it was either in 2020 or 2021, 36% of them bought a home.
Wow.
Yeah. 36%.
They were saturating the market at that point.
36% of home buyers were millennials. Let me just rephrase that. So that, I mean, it was like, you put those two components together, and it really is a recipe for disaster. Right. Nationally, we did not build enough homes over the last 15 years. So that's not something that we can solve in a 1.5, 2-year time frame, and then add on all those supply chain issues. It keeps creating obstacles.
Okay, so that led to this inflated price increase in real estate.
Yes, because the demand was so high. Because, I mean, it's always it's always that law, and it's supply and demand, and we as a country were so scarred from the recession of 2008, and so fearful, and so many people lost everything that the builder confidence might be now back where it needs to be, but over the last 15 years it hasn't been there.
And that's unfortunate. That's so unfortunate because, the new construction, the tear downs, the rehabs, that's a great way, I would think, for buyers to be able to get maybe more bang for their buck, right?
Yeah. So going back to your question, do you need a real estate agent to help you find a home?
Yes.
No, you do not. Because you guys have access to everything. Like you can go on Zillow, Realtor.com, all those websites, and you see, I mean, that stuff is syndicated straight from the MLS out to those websites. Caution. Please, for heaven's sake, do not go and click contact agent on any of those websites. Because you're not contacting the realtor that has the listing, even though it appears that way.
Right.
You're contacting somebody who's buying that click, okay?
Oh, okay.
So it's
that is good to know.
Oh my God. Good to know. As soon as you click, you're going to get a phone call because somebody is purchasing that click. They know nothing about the property.
Interesting. I did not even know that. So that's good. So then take that address, go to...
Well, actually, if you just look a little closer, you'll find the listing agent's name. Okay. And they'll have their phone number. There's just no click button.
Okay.
Yeah, and they might even put the listing agent's name and phone number and underneath have the contact agent. But it's not contacting that agent. It's contacting an agent.
Right.
It's just some other agent. So, you don't need a realtor to find a home. And that's where the confusion comes in, is that people think that real estate agent, the realtor's job is to find a home for them. And and that's not even, I mean, honestly, guys, that's not even your goal. Your goal isn't to find a home. Your goal is to purchase one.
Right.
A home that you're going to move into.
Right.
And so there's this space from the time that you find a home to the time that you close on the home that I like to refer to. That's the time that hell goes in a handbasket.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that's one of the things we also wanted to talk about. You will have so many ups and downs, the emotional
roller
aspect
coaster.
Of purchasing a home, especially if it's your first home. Right?
Whether it's your first home, like I'm working with somebody now who's probably purchased 12 homes, okay?
Okay.
And that's who I was talking to. That's who I was talking to this morning when I walked in. Like, he's an emotional mess after going through the home inspection yesterday.
Yes.
And so, but he's owned 12 other homes. So, you know, I think real estate agents sometimes make an assumption that because people have done a lot of real estate transactions that they don't have that same emotional aspect, but everybody does. I don't care if they tell you, oh, I'm a detail-oriented logic thinker. I'm sorry, logic actually moves through the emotional portion of your brain before it gets to the logic portion, so everything is tainted with emotion.
Good, very good point.
Yeah.
Very good. And so, you know, it's one of the biggest purchases that you're ever going to make. And if you're purchasing it as your home, that's going to be one of the biggest investments. So we're not talking about commercial investments and those buyers. We're talking about the residential buyer, the person who wants to buy their first home, their second home, their 12th home, whatever it is. But that's what we're talking about today. And so is it important do you think it's a good step for buyers to go ahead and get pre-approved?
Oh, absolutely. And so going back to, do you need a realtor to find a home?
Right.
No. But once you start working with a professional realtor who, you know, they didn't fog a mirror to get the real estate license. Really, that's all you have to do is fog a mirror to get your real estate license.
But it's what?
I said you only have to fog a mirror to get a real estate license. But I'm being facetious. National Association of Realtors membership is now higher than it's ever been.
Higher.
Because there are so many realtors. And I actually had joined our board of realtors at one time to see if we could put some barriers to entry.
Right.
And essentially no, because National Association of Realtors, the state boards, the state themselves, state licensing institutions, and the local membership boards rely on those membership fees.
That's true.
For profitability. So they are thriving right now because everybody thinks the market's hot. They think it's great. Oh, it's easy to, you know, be HGTV realtor, you know, but that is just fake. So back to, sorry, I
digress, but we're gonna look into that in a minute.
I get passionate about these things, as you can tell.
Especially such a good real estate.
So if you hire the right realtor, and guys, interview a couple people, see how, do they listen to you? Do they ask questions or do they just talk? So do they, you know, for me, one of the most important things is I want to know what's important to you. What are your goals? So that, because I need to know that in order so that I can get you to the end game.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that makes sense. And honestly, you also need to make sure that your personality match, because, you know, we don't think about that, I don't think, enough, because if your personalities don't match, and like you said, the real estate agent isn't listening to your needs and your wants, and that goes for any situation.
Right.
Then they're probably not a good fit for you. And so that's really important.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not saying don't give your best friend who just got their license a chance. You should, but just understand that they're going to have some learning obstacles as they go, and hope they have a good mentor to walk them through the process too. Right. When you sit down with a real estate professional on the purchase of a property, what we should be going through is it's a consultation. It's understanding, you know, are you paying cash or are you getting financing? If you're getting financing, have you been pre-approved? If you haven't been pre-approved, do you need recommendations? Do you know what it takes to get pre-approved? Do you have your last 2 years taxes? What's your debt to income ratio? You're going to need bank statements. What's your credit score? Like all of those things have to be accessible for your lender. We're also going to talk about expectations, because financing is just one of those expectations. And that one, I think the financing aspect of it drives buyers crazy because they always feel like the lender's asking them for something else.
Yes, and it's like you've just given them this document. Did you? And the mentality is, and I understand too. Do you want my firstborn too? I mean, it's just that you get so frustrated. That's part of that emotional roller coaster that you're going through because, oh my gosh, I just gave them X. Now they want this. But, they are trying to protect their interests too.
They are. And so with your lender, you want to make sure they give you a full checklist at the beginning. So you're going to want a checklist of the documents they want. A lot of lenders now have portal systems where you just upload your documents, and I love that because you can actually see. I highly recommend using Google Drive and just everything that they're asking for, make sure you have a Google Drive folder and you just stick all those documents in there, because if they ask you for that again, or maybe you didn't upload it, you just know where to go to get it. And so it saves you time so you're not constantly searching. So during that consultation process, we're going to consult on what you're looking for, why that's important to you. If you tell me you want a big backyard, I need to understand what's the purpose of the big backyard.
Right.
Is it for pets? Do you like gardening? Are you wanting a swimming pool? Is it the privacy aspect? If you want waterfront, this is a funny story. Somebody, I remember realtors tell me his sister moved here from California and she wanted waterfront. Her budget was like $300,000. You're not getting waterfront for $300,000. So she said she wanted a water view. She ended up buying a condo that had a view of the fountain in the courtyard, and that was her water view.
If that suffices, I mean, the reality sinks in once you get where you're going and you start realizing, oh, I'm not going this seems like a lot of money, but.
Well, and it also goes back to that consultation question.
Right.
It's the questioning of what's important to you about the water. Right. And for her, it was the tranquility of the sound. So that fountain provided it.
Right.
But, so it's that consultation, then setting the expectation of, okay, so once we find a home, we're going to write an offer. It's talking about what all is involved in the offer. There are two types of contracts that are used. There's an as-is contract that's highly used in our area, even though no one buys a home as is, so just drives.
It's a little bit of a misnomer, honestly, because if there are hidden defects, as is not going to cover those hidden defects. That are there. I mean, that's right.
Yeah, so, that contract was used a lot. It came to play mainly in the short sale era when people couldn't afford to keep their utility bills on. So, you knew they weren't going to repair anything. So you were literally buying it as is. Then there's what I refer to as the standard contract, which does allow the seller to make repairs to bring the property and the main functional pieces of the property into working condition. So, while we're setting expectations, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the time frames. We're going to talk about how much goes into escrow.
Yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Definitely, when you're done.
So we're going to talk about how much goes into escrow. We're going to talk about the inspection process, what to expect from the inspection, what we can and what we can ask for, and what we probably won't get. There's also, there's an appraisal, there's a survey, there's title work, homeowner's insurance. So it's like you get to that offer stage and then it's just like everything happens to get to the closing table. So do you need a realtor to find a home? No. Do you need a realtor to get to the closing table? Highly recommended.
Definitely recommended, because, just the example of everything that you're giving. And knowing that, there's a cap on the inspection or the things that need to be fixed. And so that you need to consider. One thing I'm going to say as a proviso is if, in fact, it has a binding arbitration clause, remove that, scratch through it, initial it, and no, we don't like binding arbitration.
Well, the good news is that the Florida contract actually recommends mediation, then arbitration.
Yes, and we still scratch out arbitration because you want to be able to go to court. With that said, let's focus too.
Wait a minute, I just want to say she's an attorney. I am not, I used to have this attorney would teach in the office. He would teach the contract class, and it would drive me crazy because he taught from an attorney stance, and as a realtor, I can't do those things.
Right.
So there are differences in what an attorney can do and what a real estate agent can do.
Right. But I tell all my students the same thing, and I even have some videos on that topic. So we definitely.
And technically, I'm not allowed to scratch through the contract.
Right, that would have to be
Yeah,
the
that's why I
buyer
brought
or
that-
the seller.
that's why I
Exactly.
brought that
Now
up.
you can do that as the buyer or the seller, but yes, you're right. The real estate agent can't do that for you. Even if you authorize her or him, they can't. No, sorry, that's something you actually have to do and initial, because God forbid it comes back to bite you. So
Yeah, exactly.
definitely. All right. So how do you also, or how can you help the buyer get the most out of the purchase?
Getting the most out of the purchase. This is, I mean, you and I talked about this.
Yes.
In today's market, I see 3 types of listings come on the market. Because inventory, nobody's moving, because where are they going to move? And if they sell their home, it's not the market that you sell in is the market you buy in. So if you're selling your home high, you're buying high. So the 3 types of listings I see come on the market are death, divorce, and investors. So investors might have found a property, it never went on the market, and they've remodeled it. And they've remodeled it, hopefully, to be HGTV ready. I mean, there are some investors out there with not such good design choices, but that HGTV ready home is what we find that millennial buyers want to purchase. And I don't know if it's just a lack of like that home maintenance, home repair skill.
Right.
That's been lost generationally, or if it's just the popularity of the reveal on HGTV. But we see most home buyers in this market want a move-in ready I call it HGTV ready home. If you were to find a home that needed some work on it, and primarily cosmetic, I mean, like if the main structural functional elements of the home have been done, the roof, the electrical, the AC, the plumbing are all in solid condition, and you needed to replace flooring, the kitchen, paint. I mean, those things right there bring you immediate value. Adding decking in your backyard is probably, I think it's still rated as one of the highest returns on your investment.
Isn't that interesting? Not a pool though. Or
Not a pool as far as return on the investment.
Right.
Decking, because it's inexpensive,
Okay.
but everybody wants that idea of the outdoor space.
Right.
And it's aesthetically pleasing.
Very interesting. Okay, and yeah, you've seen some beautiful decking. It's always nice to walk out from your backyard onto a deck. There's just something really nice about that.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so go ahead. Sorry.
Curb appeal.
Curb appeal.
Curb appeal is another way to help buyers. Like if they're buying a home and they want to add value to it, curb appeal is a great way to do it.
So that's for the buyer. You're buying a house and maybe the curb appeal isn't that great, but immediately adding that is going to increase the value of your house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, I would never have thought the curb appeal is going to increase the value of my house.
Oh, but it does. And it's something that a lot of investors skip on. And it's so funny to me, because if you can't get to the front door, if you can't get in the front door to see how great the house is, what's the point? And so it's the front landscaping pulls you in to the home to make you want to see more.
That's very interesting. Very good. Okay. So let's talk about we talked a little bit about the process in getting from, I found my home, this is my home, this is for me, and now I'm going through this process, and then the closing itself, so that what's happening when they get to the closing? What is that? So describe that, if you don't mind.
Well, and something that somebody asked me one time is, they said, how does a realtor help protect my money?
And that's part and parcel of the closing, and I'm glad that you brought that up. So I do want to talk about that. We can talk about that.
So just yesterday, so we were at a home inspection, the buyer's there, and actually the seller was there too. The sellers have only owned the home 2 years. Okay. So one of the things that I said was, do you have a copy of the survey? And here we're below flood zone. Most homes require flood insurance and the elevation certificate. Yes. So the seller has a copy of her survey and elevation certificate. So now the buyer doesn't have to purchase those two things, which might run between $500 and $700. So we just saved the buyer by asking that question, was able to save the buyer $500 to $700 on their closing, because those are things that you would see on a closing statement. So typically the closing is going to be, you'll hear your lender and the title company refer to it as a CD, which is a closing disclosure. I hate when we use acronyms and nobody knows what they are, but it is a closing disclosure which kind of documents everything that you've paid for regarding the purchase of the home, or that's going to be charged to you at the closing table.
Okay.
So some things are paid prior to closing, which would be like your appraisal is going to be paid. You've got to pay for the appraisal when you order the appraisal. Right. But something like survey, elevation certificate, those can be paid outside of, or paid at the closing with on the closing disclosure. So just having your real estate professional review that closing disclosure and make sure the credits and the debits are where they need to be.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yes. And you should be receiving that before the closing.
3 days prior.
At least, right.
The contract, CFPB, Consumer Financial Bureau Protection.
Requires it 3 days.
Yeah, I think that's an acronym. Requires that the buyer receive the closing disclosure 3 days prior to the closing.
Right, and you do need to go through it with a fine tooth comb and make sure that you understand. You know, if you're paying for something you didn't expect. Mm-hmm. Understand if that's even supposed to be there, because mistakes happen, and that's why you receive it 3 days in advance.
Yeah.
To get those corrections done. Let's talk about the escrow real quick, because I told you a story the other day about a friend that had deposited a large escrow, and then the deal initially fell through because of the appraisal, and they didn't want to refund the escrow because it was non-refundable. I never recommend as an attorney a non-refundable.
I know
escrow
that's
deposit.
insane.
So what?
Do you know where that I know where that advice came from?
The seller's agent.
A New York attorney. I'm sorry, New York attorneys, but I had a customer a long time ago. I think it was 2006, and he was from New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived here a long time. And he had reached out to his attorney up there, and his attorney said, "You need to have them make a $50,000 non-refundable deposit." And I was like, "No." I actually had some more choice words for that attorney, but he wouldn't talk to me. So I was like, "No, that's not. That's how we kill deals here. That's not how we get deals done."
Right.
And you told me that story about the $50,000 non-refundable, and that's a perfect example of did that buyer have an agent working for her?
Right, supposedly, and I don't even know, but supposedly that buyer didn't. I said, well, then we have an issue with the real estate agent.
Oh my God, no. Again, that real estate agent fogged a mirror, got their license, and didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Fogged a mirror. I love that. I'm going to start using that. I love that. So one of the things you need to take away from this is that you should never agree to a non-refundable escrow deposit. So,
well, I'm going to say never up front, never sometimes, never maybe.
Right, well, right, I know. Never say never, but.
Yeah, because as is contract, you're putting money in escrow.
Right.
And it is refundable if you follow the timelines of the contract.
Right.
Standard sales contract, if you follow the timelines and the details of the contract, so like if you do the home inspection and you're like, oh my God, there's too much on here, I want to cancel the contract, you've just made your escrow money in jeopardy, because that's not how you get out of a standard contract.
Right.
So yeah, escrow, and people think, well, if I follow the timelines and if I cancel within the time frame, then I should just get my escrow money back. But honestly, guys, the title company that holds escrow, they're not going to release escrow. And sorry, we're talking escrow. So let me just clarify what that is.
Right.
A lot of people call it earnest money, and some people call it good faith deposit.
Right.
Title companies call it earnest money. Realtors call it earnest money. But in all honesty, if you look at the language of the contract, which is what we should use, is called escrow. Right. So that's the amount that the buyer is putting up, saying, yes, this is my good faith deposit
Right.
that I'm going to move forward with diligence and good effort to make this thing happen.
Exactly.
And so, if you're a buyer, you don't do that, and you've taken somebody's home off the market for 20, 30 days,
Right.
you shouldn't get your escrow back. I'm sorry.
If you're not operating with due diligence and
Right,
in good faith.
right.
But I will say that also, when it comes to the deposit, if in fact the property does not appraise, then that should be a triggering event for return of the deposit, because arguably
It is if you have
Right.
the appraisal contingency.
exactly, and that was waived also, and that's a very important thing as well, that appraisal contingency. Yeah.
Yeah, so in this market, you're not seeing very many appraisal contingencies because properties are not appraising. The property value is increasing faster than the appraisers can keep track of.
Right.
And that happens in some markets. It's just what it is. And so instead of seeing appraisal contingencies in today's market, what we see are appraisal gap addendums. And the appraisal gap addendum just states that, okay, so the buyer is buying this house at $500,000. If it doesn't appraise, let's just say it appraises at $535,000, that the buyer is still willing to pay a gap up to a certain amount. So all
And
that's
that's smarter.
predetermined. All that's predetermined. So let's just say if you had a gap of $10,000, it appraised at $535,000, then the buyer has an out because their gap was only $10,000.
Right. And that is reasonable, I would say, and that's
I think I started
the
with
same.
$500,000. I'm at $550,000. Sorry, my numbers were off there.
No, but that's fine. But that's, and that's the difference too with hiring a real estate agent who knows the market and knows that lingo and that language, because if you are agreeing to just forfeit your money, even if it doesn't appraise, and let's say your appraisal is $100,000 lower.
And that's what that one was,
That's
right?
right. Then the appraised value, that's a significant amount of money. We're not talking $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 where you can possibly come up with the difference. It just depends on the buyer.
It does, and I think it's also important to note, like $100,000 on that purchase was about 10%.
Right. Right.
So if you're looking at a $550,000 and you look at percentage wise, it's not that much different. So it's also important to look at percentage wise. A common error I find is that a lot of real estate agents, when the buyer's getting financing, they fall to the financing contingency of the sales contract
Yes.
as an appraisal contingency. And guys, it actually is not. So if your buyer is putting 20% down, the loan value needs to be 80% of the purchase price. And as long as the appraised value still meets that loan value, they can get financing.
Right.
So a lot of people make that error, and I just, I wanted to say that because I don't want you to think that the financing contingency is an actual appraisal contingency. It depends on the debt to income ratio, the loan value, and the appraised value all have to be factored in there before they can get denied for the loan in the time frame of the financing contingency to get their escrow money back.
Right. And there's a lot of technical jargon that we're talking about and content. No, but information that you can go back and you can rewatch this that you need to know regardless. And as a seller goes, though, a seller never wants a finance contingency if at all possible, right? Because that's,
Yeah, but not everybody has cash. So,
Right.
you have to deal with it. There is, in the last couple of years, something that people have done is, so in the sales contract in the Florida FAR contract, it's Florida Realtors Bar
Right.
Association of Realtors. So there's paragraph 8 is the financing paragraph, and so 8A states that the buyer is paying cash and there's no financing contingency.
Right.
8B states that the buyer is getting financing and the contingencies of that financing. And so what even financed buyers have done is they're essentially waiving that condition of the contract, saying that they are paying cash, even though they're getting financing, but that contract is not contingent on their ability to get financing.
Interesting.
So if for some reason their loan didn't go through and they couldn't close, they would lose their escrow deposit.
Right. Absolutely.
But
Yes.
buyer and the market that we've been in the last 2 years being so brutal, buyers have been doing that. They've been taking that risk.
Wow.
And it goes back to that buyer consultation. Like that would be something, hey, this is a risk, but it's also an option. Like we don't get to live life without risk.
Right.
You just need to know how much of a risk it is.
Right. And have your approval letter.
Yes.
You know, if you know that you're going to purchase, go ahead, get through the mortgage process, right? The financing process, if that's what you're going to do, because then you go in and you're armed, knowing already what you can finance, and you're not putting yourself out or worrying, okay, I can't buy $1 million home, but I can buy a $750,000 home, or I can buy a $500,000 home, but at least you know. And you also know, if you find a home above that and you're not going to get financing, maybe you need to borrow off your 401k if you
something
if you
like
need
that.
to. There's other creative things that you can do. So
yeah, and then even going back to that approval process. So there are a lot of lenders now that will take you pretty much all the way through underwriting on your financials, and all they need to do is plug in an address and make sure that the home is solid. And that saves the buyer so much stress, because guys, once you get a home under contract, and you've gone through the inspection period, you're visualizing yourself living there.
Right.
You're dreaming about it.
Oh my
you're
gosh,
dreaming
so
about the family and friends that you're gonna have, and the cookouts and the dinners and the coffee in the morning. Like, you just start emotionally putting yourself in that home, and then if you get denied that financing, day 20, day 25, it's devastating.
Oh, absolutely.
And you might have already put in your notice with your landlord. You might, there's so much that can happen there. So go ahead and do that get a lender that'll do that full approval process with you.
Right, absolutely. God, all good information. Is there anything else that you think that people should know in the seller's market if they're preparing to buy?
Well, I will say that I am seeing the market level off a little bit. So it's not as competitive as it was. In March of this year, the absorption rate for single-family residential homes was 234%. Now, let me just share with you what that means. 100 homes hit the market, 234 went under contract.
Wow.
How is that even possible? Okay. Our inventory has been about, I'd say, 7 to 14 days worth of inventory, meaning that if no other homes came on the market in the next 7 to 14 days, all the homes would be gone.
Wow. That's just amazing.
But that is shifting. Shifting. So that is good. We are seeing more properties come on the market, just slightly. It's not a huge. We are seeing more price decreases because sellers are realizing they can't test. And we've also seen some buyer pullback. So, you might not get 47 offers on a property. 47 offers.
47 offers.
I don't know why realtors do that to themselves or the seller or the buyer. Guys, you can get 10, okay, and cut it off.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you probably would say, okay, we're taking the first 10 offers. That's it.
That's a great. I love that. Taking the first 10. I might even change it. Taking the first 5. I love that. But no, so we're not seeing like the open house mayhem right now. There's several factors. The interest rate's increasing. It's summertime, and right now is the time of graduation. So whether you have graduates graduating from middle school, high school, college, grad school, or not, it is the school time frame is one of the biggest factors in the nation regarding housing. So we've seen a lot of people are distracted with those things right now. So not as many people going into open houses. We've also seen a shift that Saturday open houses have much more traffic than Sunday open houses.
Makes sense.
Where traditionally it was a Sunday open house thing. So, if you're looking to buy a home, good news is it's not as brutal as it was. However, interest rates have increased. However, they're still historically so low. Money is still so cheap. Yeah, you're not going to get that 3% mortgage anymore. I'm sorry, guys. But 5%. I think. Do you remember what your interest rate was on your first home?
Oh, on my first home, actually was high on my first home. I think it was like 9% on my first home. So in the big scheme of things,
Yeah, my first home was 8.5.
Right. So in the big scheme of things, we thought we were getting a good deal then with the rate. So in the big scheme of things, 6%, 5%, 6.2%, whatever. That's really not that bad. We're just kind of spoiled right now with these lower interest rates, but it was inevitable they had to come back up at some point.
Yeah, you couldn't keep them that point, but yeah. So anyways, so if you're looking to buy, I am seeing some relief for you. If you're thinking about selling your home, the sky is no longer the limit. There are limits now. We have discovered. We found that bar, that threshold.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's just making sure that you're working with somebody who really does. I mean, again, it's so easy to get a real estate license.
Right.
If you're watching this, you might know 3 to 5 to 10 realtors. They're not all created equal, and not
anything.
Not everybody takes it as a profession. That's their career choice. And obviously, I've been doing it for 20 years. It's my career choice.
It is, and you've done so well, so impressive. Every time, it's so funny. Rachel says, "Well, I'm going to do this," and sure enough, that's what she did. She killed it. And so back into the real estate market, selling, and I just think that selling buyer's agent, and there's not really a difference, is there, between or?
No, so I work with buyers and sellers. I like doing that because when I go sit down with a seller, I can tell them the buyer perspective, and when I go talk to a buyer, I can tell them the seller perspective. So I like having both of those. There are some larger real estate teams that you might find an agent on that team that is very dedicated just to buyers. Which is great too, because their energy, their focus, their knowledge is all right there. So, some agents only work with one side or the other. I've got an agent I'm working with in Tampa right now. He only works with sellers. If you called him to buy the home, he's not going to call you back because he doesn't work with buyers. So I'm like, really? That's just crazy to me. But it works for him. It works for him. It's his knowledge area. So yeah, I work with both. Our price point is typically higher, and I get that question quite a bit. Like, why would you even work with me? I'm only buying a $300,000 home. I'm a big believer in providing service, a high level of quality service. I think customer service has really died in the last couple of years, and I'm passionate about providing a high level quality customer service.
I agree. That's so important. So Rachel, thank you so much for joining
Thank you.
today.
I've enjoyed it.
A few technical issues, but we got through them, and I appreciate everybody joining us. I'm going to go ahead and put Rachel's information on the live so that you all can contact her if you'd like to. And follow her at Rachel, Tenpenny, or how is it? Rachel?
I think it's just -Tenpenny. I'm just curious, on Instagram, are we sideways?
I don't know. That's a good question because we seem sideways. It's going to be interesting to see how that actually comes out. Because I've never done it. I think
we're sideways on
done that. So it's interesting. That's okay. Just, tilt your head the right way. We're good.
Hey, it's part of life, right? You get obstacles, you figure out how to work with them, or you just move on. What's important to you?
We are learning as we go, that's for sure. And technology is, social media is where we are really inputting our resources from a personal growth standpoint.
Yeah, we're growing.
Growing here and there. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, I'm hoping to have a mortgage broker talk to you, and then we'll finish out this month, and then next month we're going to have tough lady boss jobs. So I can't wait. We got some really interesting ones already. So
I think real estate is a tough job. I'm just putting that out there.
I think it is a tough job. I think definitely. You guys, oh my goodness. Late nights, early mornings.
You walk those yards in heels. I call it an obstacle course. We'll run through the house in heels, turn on the lights, close the toilet lids, put up people. I had to put up a bong one time.
Oh, nice. And then spray the house and make sure. What is that relaxed smell? Everyone, thank you so much. We'll see what's going on with Instagram. It should be interesting.
Bye, guys.
Bye.